Meeting of the EAC. Good to see everybody. Does anybody have any edits on the minutes from last time? Ron, thank you for doing that. They were very well done. I appreciate that. Yep. So let's approve the minutes unless anyone has objections. Okay. Minutes are approved. Does anyone have announcements? And I don't have anything myself. Things seem to be pretty quiet out there. Okay. No new announcements. Let's talk about new business. And Ron, I'm going to kick this over to you, if you don't mind, to talk about the Stoneleigh and Lower Merion School District issue. Do you want to give us a little background on that?
Sure. Yep. So I threw it to Matt and say, hey, thanks, Matt. So I brought it up to Matt as something that I saw, some publications on. I think we all get the emails from Molly about the issue itself, which in a nutshell is trying to, Lower Merion Township would like to reclaim some of Stoneleigh property to build a school on. And I guess then all of a sudden I saw some yard signs in the township. And then we all saw Molly's emails from this week about the Lower Merion Township School District meeting on Tuesday night, I believe. And so it's not really necessarily because I have an opinion one way or another. I just felt like we should bring it up as an advisory council, and it's right next to us that if we're asked for an opinion or if there's a stance, I guess I thought we'd make sure we discuss it a little bit. Real quick, most current events, right? This came up per Molly's email at the Lower Merion Township meeting on Tuesday. I couldn't tell if Lower Merion was digging in or if they were looking elsewhere. If you saw in her email, they didn't necessarily say we acquiesce, but they are meeting with a different property there to potentially go down a different avenue. But I couldn't get a clarity on that if anybody has any thought on that.
So actually, I don't get Molly's emails, and I have no idea where Stoneleigh is or what the status of this is. So could you give me like 2-minute version?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So Stoneleigh, here's what I know about. I'm not some expert. Stoneleigh was an area of land about 250 acres or so that was given by the Haas family and meant to be preserved and an environmental area. So it's been a couple of years that they've been working on getting it ready for the public with some trails and some carved areas, if you will. That just opened, I think, 2 weeks ago. Yes. Yeah, Mother's Day. And it's actually pretty beautiful. So anyway, at the same time, Lower Merion says, hey, we're the fastest growing district in the state of Pennsylvania. I didn't realize that. But they are, so they need to find space for more schools. And apparently, maybe what's in dispute is they've suggested maybe 8 or 9 acres that's part of Stoneleigh is developable and should be used to develop a school, new school for Lower Merion.
It's at the corner of County Line and Spring Mill. It's where those bunnies are that they decorate, for the seasons. That's where the area is. And I did look into it too because I got your email. And there was a conservation easement placed on the property by the Haas family, and Lower Merion Conservancy had, I guess, handled it for years. And then in 2016, a Natural Lands Trust took over, did a beautiful job, developed it, opened it, built the parking lot. And they evidently, in the conservation easement, there's about 7 acres that they said was a buildable lot. And they supposedly, at least according to the Natural Lands Trust, is that the idea was of giving it to a nonprofit. And if they needed money to sustain the property, they could use it as a buildable portion. It was not meant for eminent domain to come in and take it as a buildable lot. So I think that's where they're really butting heads. And the head of the Natural Lands Trust, I think, is correct that this was a conservation easement for this land for a public purpose, and that was really reserved if the nonprofit needed money. But again, Lower Merion is the government. They do have the power of eminent domain, and they said the conservation easement will not stand in their way. So this is pretty interesting.
And as you can imagine, passions are flaring a little bit over this. It's been a really big fight. And, I think it's one of those things where it's not in our area. It's not part of Radnor, so we don't necessarily have anything directly to do with it, but it does kind of inform the way a lot of these things play out. And I know there's always a tension between, sort of development and conservation on the one hand and, kind of government versus private organizations on the other.
Right.
I know that from what I've read, Lower Merion was trying to condemn or survey for condemnation the entire property. It wasn't clear if they had designs on something besides that 7 or 8 acres. Does anybody know, did they care about what happens to the rest of the property? Because the way I read it initially was that they wanted to condemn the entire thing, but that doesn't seem like that would be accurate.
Yeah, I didn't see them go, just about the 6.9 acres, about
Yeah,
7.
I know that's what they wanted to develop, but the way one of the things I read, they said that they wanted to survey the entire property for condemnation, which seemed extreme.
Right.
I think I saw something like that too, that they wanted to go a little bit further.
Right.
I guess the way I read the tea leaves from Molly's emails is that, you know, she's certainly monitoring it. It certainly was a well-attended Lower Merion Township School Board meeting with a lot of support, right, for the Stoneleigh side. So that's got to factor into it somehow. And maybe, like Matt said, I don't think we have to have an opinion on it officially. It's not our territory, but it's so close, right? It's right there. I figure we should be talking about it, and maybe we just make sure, I'll forward you Molly's emails, and make sure you're on that list. And maybe we can stay abreast of what's going on through that. Bring it up as needed.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
It's a good summary. I have an item of new business. I'd like to propose, now that we've finished our stream science educational program that we got the grant for, I'd like to recognize the high school interns that were involved in that program. If you guys are okay with this, maybe we set a date at one of the upcoming future meetings and have the students come in so we can have them stand up and be recognized. They did a great job and really were instrumental in making that program possible.
Cool.
Any other new items? Ron?
I just wrote down if we all got the email on the right to know / sunshine law training, June 7th here. There was just one item I saw from Jennifer, I think.
Mhm.
June 7th, 7 to 9 p.m. is what I wrote down. Here.
Thanks, Ron. Okay, work group reports and discussion. I don't think we've got anything on sustainable parks right now. I don't think anyone's directly involved in parks that's here. Okay, yeah, not with Dan. Dan out. Let's talk about Sustainable Pennsylvania. Ron, I know you were going to take a look at the website. Did you get anywhere with that?
I did. So here's a couple of notes I prepped. The first thing I guess I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that I thought was kind of interesting, and for background, right, this is, you know, Radnor Township going for an environmental certification, which is a process of going through answering questions and getting scored and getting ranked, if you will. The first thing I thought was interesting is we were both at that presentation a month or so ago where the lady from Abington Township was talking, and Abington Township went through and got a certification. When I went to our site, because I got the password, right? So I was going to our site, and I noticed, I was like, where's Abington? Oh, they got a different certification through a different entity. So that's why I want to just raise awareness. I think we have the right one, but we're doing something called Sustainable Pennsylvania Community Certification. And I described that process. We started filling out a couple of questions down that path. Abington went through a STAR certified process, STAR, right, which is like sustainable tools and something.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. The best, I looked at both those websites, and Abington Township is the only entity in Pennsylvania that's STAR certified. Everything else is nationwide. Obviously, the Sustainable Pennsylvania is all Pennsylvania, and they both had about equal number of entities, just one was more Pennsylvania-based and one was more nationally.
If I remember correctly, there was a lot of local townships on the Sustainable Pennsylvania, the one we were looking at, right?
There
I mean,
was, yes.
I think from that meeting, they listed some
Yes,
nearby. Okay.
definitely. And
So
that's why-
Abington is the outlier. They did something different.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's why I think we have the right one. You know, Lower Merion's in this Sustainable Pennsylvania Community thing. You know, all the surrounding ones are.
Well, we could always, the woman who ran that seminar seemed like she knew a bit about it. She might be a good person to go back to just to check, to find out the differences, and maybe she could just explain why there are different programs and why there's
Yeah, I
different
was thinking of
contributions.
asking her to see if she even was aware that there's a second, thing. They just did the star one, and
Yeah.
maybe they thought it was the right one. I just want to make sure that people were aware of that, right? I think we have the right one, so we'll keep going on that path.
The last thing we want is too many certifications.
Well, and honestly, they both seem like challenging processes to go through. I copied and pasted, actually, the STAR website had better information on how to get going, but you could apply it to either one of them. And theirs, they said, they suggested a project management be set up, 1 to 2 key staff people, with some interns supporting it, and they spend on average 1 to 2 months getting organized and 6 months collecting data for about a year or longer process to go through a certification.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what we're up against.
That's a heavy lift.
It is, but I think, so here's where I came down to. I think we might have some pathways to do something if we think it's the right priority. Bob? Right, Bob?
Zinkowski?
Yes.
Yes.
So he started filling out some of the questions
Okay. For which one?
for the Sustainable Pennsylvania one, right? And the key to it is, and what drives, I think, a lot of the work and the need to use township people is, and bother them a little bit is that even to get the lowest level certification, you have to have a minimum of 10% of the questions with supporting evidence and links, which means you probably have to have somebody endorsing your answers. When they're asking questions around, do you have a diversity program for hiring candidates? And how, I can probably say we probably do, but I don't know if I could put it in.
There was some
Official
even
writing.
that you would have to talk to utilities for. I know there was some about water distribution.
Yes.
And certainly we have water distribution in the township, but that's not necessarily something you go to the township for. You'd have to go to Aqua or something.
Potentially.
And I was confused about how much evidence you actually need, because I was looking at the stormwater requirements, and a lot of those things, you could provide the same link for 5 or 6 different questions.
I'm sure you can reuse links.
And I wasn't sure if that was okay or not, or if you needed to specify, here's this document, 2nd page, 3rd paragraph, or anything like that.
I think you're okay.
Okay.
With some evidence, but it just requires a little bit more overhead to get that proof and evidence.
Right.
So even the lowest level needs 10%, you need a certain level of score with a lot of yeses. Bob actually had a couple of no's, like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, well, that's not gonna score well at all. But anyway, I'd say the bare minimum to probably move forward. By the way, bronze is 30% of the questions have proof. Platinum's 90% have proof, right? So it just keeps on adding up. There's, I think, 9 sections with probably about 10 to 12 questions on average at each. So you're talking over 100 questions, many different areas, from public safety to hiring practices to stormwater management to energy efficiency programs and recycling, and budgetary things too, right? So,
And then to actually have proof, the proof has to be available online. It can't just be in like a handbook.
correct, it's got to be shareable or portable some way.
Right.
The good news is a lot of that stuff is on the website. There's a lot,
I think it is.
lot of documents on
I
there.
think so too. So if we were going to do this, I'm okay to try to facilitate it and drive it. But it's going to require, maybe even going through Jennifer or something to say, hey, look, we probably need 1 or 2 at least liaisons to work with to maybe divide and conquer and get to the right person at the township level, if one's even required to have a sign. I might say, oh, these are okay, you're good with these. These, you better go to so-and-so and get a blessing. But I think it's involving that, and it's probably a couple of hours to get going in a meeting. As I said, I can definitely kick off, try to drive it, facilitate it, and organize it. I just think we're going to need some help from township resources.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate your stepping up. Is it your sense that once you start answering the questions, you kind of reach a point where you say, okay, I think we've got them all documented, and then you get approval from the state? How does that work? Do they have to actually look at it?
Like to get the actual certification, like who
Right.
judges us?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's pretty mechanical that, they have a points for each question, and then it shows you how many points you need minimum to get to a certain level of certification and how many links you have to have. I guess technically by the book, you could do the minimum and say, well, I'm going to answer these 2 sections, and that somehow gets you to, and do a link for every one of them.
And I don't think that's the wrong strategy at all. I think if there's a way to do it that minimizes the amount of work, and where if we decide that, you know, we have to reuse the link for a bunch of questions, I guess part of what I'm asking is, do you think a human being is going to actually go through and follow each of those links and say, oh, yeah, this is enough documentation, or no, this is not, and I'm going to knock you down 2 points?
I don't know
That-
the details of that judgment process.
And I don't know if it matters, but I think there's a lot of this stuff, to Jim's point, you know, that it is out there, but it's probably going to be the same source for a lot of different things. And, you know, to get to the point where it's like really well documented is probably hard, but to get to the point where it's, you know, at least
Referenced.
it's referenced is probably not too bad.
It seems like the easiest way to sort of do it would be to go through the process at its most basic level, get to the point where you have 10 points,
Yep.
submit it and see what happens, and
Yep.
then say, and then wait for them to come back and say, no, you need more documentation, or this isn't acceptable, or, because we're never really, you know, unless they have good instructions, and it sounds like they don't, we're never really gonna know till you do it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they probably don't have great instructions on the actual judging and like the nuances. I guess I'd say it seems like we should probably collaborate with people at the township to even some level, to even do that, just for, you know, for awareness and making sure we're submitting for Radnor Township, you know, to become certified.
Yeah.
So I still think that's probably the path, but I agree, maybe it's a shorter, potentially smaller exercise to do a review of some of these questions. They say, these are low-hanging fruit, we can
Yeah.
grab those.
Right.
And I think that was our initial strategy before we kind of went down this path. If you look at the ones that Bob has already started to fill in, do we get close to 10% of the points? No.
Well, and partially it's because it's not, that's nothing against Bob, right? It's
Yeah.
partially because there wasn't enough filled out. I mean,
Yeah.
there was maybe 10 out of the 100 and some
Okay,
that had any answer, but some of the answers, we wouldn't get any points for, because the answer
Okay.
was no.
got it.
You know, so I don't think we would score well.
Which-
And there were no links, there's 0 links or proof right now.
Well, I think the way we discussed it before was take, because it's pretty, there's a lot of sections, a lot of questions in each section. If we want township help, I think the way to do it is to make it as easy for them as possible. Maybe we do the entire thing ourselves. Then we could split up the sections and then write some specific questions that we do need the township for, and just make it like yes or no. Like, instead of giving them a list of 100 questions, here's 5 that we definitely need your help on, and it's a
I like
simple
that.
yes or no answer.
I like that.
Definitely.
I think between the members of this group, there's probably enough knowledge of some of the stuff the township does that we could at least make an educated guess, even if we don't completely know the answer.
And the website is completely searchable. So if you're looking
Yep.
for an ordinance on recycling schedule or something, how hard is it to find the link, you know, for that stuff and just kind of put it in? Do we all have access to the place where you fill in the questions?
Well, kinda.
Yeah.
I have Colleen's email address and password.
Okay?
The one good thing is, if we did want to take a shot at this and divide and conquer, like everybody try half a dozen questions or something, the good news is that it automatically saves everything, like, as soon as you update it.
Yeah.
So,
I think that would be really smart, and I think, you know, we could do it either in series, you know, we could sort of take 6 questions each and pass it along to the next person, or we could.
Parallel.
Yeah, or parallel, I mean, I guess I don't want to crash the site by trying to have 4 people log in with the same address or something, but, I mean, if there's a way for us to,
yeah.
just as you said, just break it off into little pieces, I think people would be willing to do that.
Yeah.
I think maybe splitting it up by section might be,
Yeah.
I don't have.
Shouldn't have
I forget
2
how long
people
sections
working
are.
on the same section.
Yeah, that's fair. 'cause you're
Didn't
gonna
someone
wanna-
set up a Google Doc with all the sections?
I did, and we
Okay.
can use that as a guide if we want to, and then just like have people go research those questions and then pass the password around.
I'll tell you what,
That's fine.
I'll send out the sections
Okay,
to everybody here. And then you guys can pick one. I mean, reply back and say, I'm going to take this one,
Sure.
I know most about that, or whatever, these
Okay.
2. And then at least we'll have a little bit of divvying up and not being on each other's toes. And then, yeah, I guess I'd say if you have an idea when you may be going in and doing that, you could let us know and say, okay,
Well,
this won't be in the same.
if access to the actual website is an issue, we could just do it as a shared document. Because I think it's
Yeah.
question, yes or no, link. I mean, that sounds like an Excel
Right.
spreadsheet to me.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't, and so if
Right.
somebody wants to take the responsibility of entering that, we
Of
could.
copying it in, right. We
Right.
could all answer it in the Google Doc, which is
Right.
shareable.
Yeah,
And then someone could
and
just
then one
copy it
person's
in.
just the scribe who puts it all in there.
Okay, I
That's
can do
fine.
that.
Ron, do you have the link to the Google Doc? I can't remember. That might have been before you started.
Could you resend
Yeah,
it?
I'll send it to you, just so you see what's in there. I may have made some mistakes like copying and pasting, but I think it's 90%.
Yeah, just resend it out to all of us.
I'll resend it out, and then if you want to, like, I think we even took an initial cut at assigning sections, but we'll revisit that, and then, you know, we'll all just go off and fill in some blanks.
Yep.
Okay.
The only thing we do different is I'll try to keep score, like, hey, that's enough. That actually gets us
Yep.
to a little, right? And then we can
Perfect,
stop
okay.
and do
That'll
that
be
kind of
great,
stuff.
yep.
So if you send that out, then I'll divvy it up and make sure we have
Okay.
assignment.
Excellent.
Thank you. Okay. Anything on community education and awareness? I got nothing. Okay. No liaison report. Any old business?
I don't know if it comes up in the Ready for 100.
Right.
Sorry, I don't know if it comes up in the Ready for 100 thing we talked about last time with the public comment. I don't know if we had any real specific follow-ups from that. I did a little bit more looking. I tried to get to the meeting that they mentioned. I wasn't able to make it to the Haverford Township meeting. But I didn't know if there's any other information from the discussion last time.
That's the march in Harrisburg on like the 12th or something?
It's actually, I don't think it's related to that.
Okay.
This was the, last
Sarah
time there was,
Cohen came
yeah,
in.
Sarah came in and gave a presentation about a program called Ready for 100, which is basically becoming 100%
Renewable energy.
renewable.
Yeah, there's a march in Harrisburg for that.
Is there? Okay.
In mid-June, I think it's June 12th or
Okay.
something like that. It was a work day, so I was like, oh, that's an interesting timing. But I think it was June 12th,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you have a link for that?
Maybe,
Any idea what the organization is, just so folks can find it if they're interested?
look it up.
Thank you. That's a great one. No, and I think we were kind of waiting to hear back on what some of the action steps might be, and I think it was decided that this group would be happy to serve as a sounding board, and, you know, if folks want to come here and present to the public and have an open discussion about it, that we'd be
Yeah.
up for that.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
I got it from Penn Environment.
Penn
Yeah, that's where I
Environment.
got it from.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
The only extra one I had there was it came up last time in the discussion where it was mentioned about,
What's June 12th? Right?
you know, trying to.
June 12th.
Yep.
Trying to leverage things like LED lighting, which was the first thing. Energy efficiency is one of the first things in this. And that there were some challenges with maybe it wouldn't reduce their electric bill perhaps, or something like that. I guess I'd say the one thing I thought of afterwards was, and curious about if Radnor Township owns the light poles. Anybody know if we own our light poles?
I'm going to say I think we do, because my homeowners association has had meetings about requesting new light poles, and they've said that it has to go through the township, and the township installs them and maintains them, or maybe we had to pay to install it, but then the township would maintain it, or, I don't remember exactly, but there was a conversation about it.
And it's not to get into that too much. I guess what I'd say is I learned in one of the conferences I was at actually 2 weeks ago in California that a lot of townships and cities are buying back poles if they've sold them or given them up to their electric company before, because they are finding them to be very good revenue generating assets for things like 5G repeaters, cell towers, new sensors for things like pollution levels, traffic cameras, anything.
darned.
Right? And so,
Had no idea.
yeah, so I just thought I didn't
Right.
know if we own, I'm new here, right? So I don't know if we own our light
Right.
poles or if there's any strategy. I was working with the city of Portland that's in the process of buying back their poles. They sold them years ago as a revenue generator to the local utility, Portland General Electric there. And now they're in the process of buying back many of them because they view it as a long-term investment and asset.
Interesting.
So,
Do I remember hearing a story at this group about the township switching to LED lights as a pilot and then switching them back because there were complaints that the lights were too bright? I think I remember
That sounds familiar.
hearing about that, right?
this township or just any?
This township, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think they tried them out in certain areas and folks complained about them. I don't know if I'm just making that up or not, but it might be something to look into. And it just all goes to the point that we've had a lot of energy discussions over the years, and the township has been involved and sometimes is positive about it and sometimes not so much. And I think the cost definitely plays into it, but there are lots of other perception-related issues that we have to navigate as well. And that's a real challenge, I think, with the whole Ready for 100 philosophy. You know, it's sort of, I think it's a great idea, and I think that it's going to take some momentum getting folks on board with it.
I second that. And the only last thing I brought out there was, that I thought was interesting, I read through and I supported everything. I also support world peace.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how to get there.
Yeah.
And when you talk about trying to create clean jobs locally, I love it. But that's hard, that's bigger stuff. And when the initiatives are by 2035 or 2050, it almost implies that these are a 15, 20, 30-year program, and it just requires a lot of effort.
I agree, and I think that there's a lot to be gained, excuse me, there's a lot to be gained by focusing on smaller attainable targets, because I think you get a lot more sort of positive reinforcement that way. It's easier to kind of keep the momentum up.
We really want to be just aligning those. I mean,
Yeah.
what we're doing anyway for the line, so it could all be one and the same.
I don't disagree, and I think it's a great initiative. I just, I think there are some challenges ahead of us, so we'll have to keep our stamina up. Thanks for filling us in on that. Anything else on old business?
Where do we stand with the investigation into the solar project for the high school?
The next facilities meeting is June 5th,
Okay.
and I've asked to have it put on the agenda so that we could discuss it. And I keep saying, we just want to offer our help. We're not trying to force anything on them. I think they feel a little overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. And there's possibility of grant writing. I said, we would just like to pick up that end, whatever we can do. So
I
the meeting
wonder,
is the facilities.
I wonder if, we talked about kind of getting high school students involved at some
Yes.
level. We could do another internship program and,
Oh, that's a
and
great
get
idea.
students involved in helping write a grant.
Okay.
I bet there'd be some interest.
Is that meeting here?
I think the facilities meeting is on South Wayne. I think it's by the middle school.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. I think it's 5 o'clock on June 5th.
Of course, it's 5 o'clock.
Great.
Might be 6. Okay.
Any other old business?
Are you going to that meeting, Colleen?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Public comment? No? Okay. I've noticed the planters up around town. That's very exciting. So you guys have really made fast progress. I'm really impressed. Yep. We'll see how it goes. I guess it's a little early to get any produce yet.
Yeah, just some herbs are really got
Okay.
and that so I guess
Okay.
too soon.
Too soon, but we'll keep an eye out. Great. Thank you. I think we're all done unless anybody has anything else. Move to adjourn? Anybody? Second? All right. We're done. Thanks, everyone.
Thank